Welcome, everybody. It's 6 p.m., and so I'll call the special meeting of council for June 16th, 2026 to order. Before we adopt the agenda, there is a procedural item to deal with section 5.4.5 of the procedure bylaw. A special meeting can only be called, the only things that we can deal with on a special meeting is the reason it was called. Staff did find something that they would like us to deal with as well in a timely manner. So to do that, we have to pass a resolution that unanimously to allow those other things to be considered at the meeting. So I will look for a mover and a seconder for discussion, and that in accordance with section 5.4.5 of procedure bylaw 255413, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll approved consideration of staff report T-019-26, bylaw 265471 and bylaw 265472 as attached to the agenda, as these items were not included in the original notice of the special council meeting called under section 5.4.1. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Halleroux and, sorry, Deputy Mayor move? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Halleroux for second. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. So with that, approval of the agenda as presented to council. Mover and a seconder that the agenda for the June 16th, 2026 special meeting of council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll be adopted as presented. Councillor Van Kootenbossens and Councillor Bowman. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest now that we've approved the agenda? Seeing none. That takes us down to special staff reports, and I will turn it over to Mr. Graves for the first one on development charge reduction program.
Certainly, I'll turn this over to the treasurer in a second to outline her report. But I do want to make it very clear that this is not a guarantee that we will get this funding. We are doing everything we can because we believe it's the right thing to do. It's been a great deal of work for everybody to put this application together, and I want to thank all staff, and most of the staff that you see here have been working diligently on this application, and it's been great to do this. As I say, we believe it's the right thing to do, and we're trying to mimic the senior level of governments and on what their priorities are once again, and we hope we'll be successful, but they are focusing on more hard services, so we won't be the top priority. So it's not a guarantee that we'll get this funding. That I'll turn it over to the treasurer.
Okay, thank you. So in addition, this report provides council with an overview of the Development Charges Reduction Program, or DCRP, and also seeks council direction on whether the town should proceed with submitting an application. Just a quick overview, the DCRP is a part of Canadian-Ontario Partnership to Build initiative, and it's designed to accelerate housing by reducing residential development charges by at least 30% to 50% for at least 3 years. And in exchange, municipalities can access funding through a competitive process. That's just to confirm the CEO's comment about that it's competitive and there is no guarantee. So the participation requires from the town to reduce, to implement the DC reduction upon signing the agreement, if we approve, and it includes retroactive application to building permits issued after March 30th, 2026. So the town should also is also required to contribute at least 10% of eligible project cost and submit up to 5 eligible infrastructure projects that are contained in our current development charges background study. So staff identified 3 projects for consideration that are currently included in our development charges study. So that would be the multi-use recreational center, Clark Road Urbanization project, and Wallace Line reconstruction. So again, just because it's the main project we would like to apply is the MURC. It's not on the priority list, so there is no guarantee that this funding will be approved. And also, if we only get approval for, let's say, for the roads project, we will evaluate how much funding we'll receive and whether or not it makes sense for us to proceed, because the higher money project is the MURC. That's our priority. We have done some modeling that shows that the positive net benefit ranging from $6.8 to $7.4 million. It's after we account for our portion of our, like 10% of our contribution and the reduction that we are projecting for the next 3 years. So the positive about around $7 million. So if we were approved, the grant funding would fully offset our lost development charges revenue and allow us to proceed with the project as expected. So despite uncertainty and some risks associated with potentially being approved only for road project, staff is still recommending town to proceed with an application because of the potential magnitude and of funding available and the opportunity to advance this key infrastructure project. If successful, Council would consider later amendment to our development charges by law, and also, of course, staff does not recommend to implement the reduction before we hear from the government whether or not we are successful. So if Council has any questions, we have done a lot of work. We have been working on the application in the parallel, so the application is pretty much complete. So if Council approves and would like town to proceed with an application, we will be ready because it's due Monday, this Friday, 10 a.m. this Friday. That's the due date. So the application is pretty much complete. So staff is ready to submit, to make the application.
I just have one question to start off before I hand it over to Council, because I'm sure there'll be others, is that, my understanding, and I want to make sure we're good on this one, is that if we put an application in, and I know the application says that we're doing this in good faith, that in principle, that if we receive the funding that we're asking for, we will reduce development charges. That's part of the deal, but our good faith is that this is the projects we want for that funding. So if we receive partial acceptance of our application, we are not under an obligation to proceed at that point. The council has the right to say, no, we don't want, this is not the right time for us.
Yes, this is correct.
Okay. Thank you. We'll open up the floor for questions from council. Councilor Hughes, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to the Treasurer. You had mentioned that the upper tier, or Michael had mentioned that the upper tier is also applying for some of this this funding. Are any of their applications also encompassing what we're applying for?
We don't know. I will confirm that tomorrow. I will contact the county and confirm whether or not we know for a fact that Clark Road Urbanization is not included in their development charges background study. but we think that Wallace Lane line may be, so we'll have to confirm whether or not they are,
Okay.
they included this project in their application.
And I can provide some further information on that. At the council meeting that county considered this, there were at that time, staff had identified 17 different projects across the county that they were looking at on the initial part that could be included. But again, at that time, the actual application hadn't come out. And so they will be putting up 5 applications in, depending on bundling, but there's no guarantee at this point because they had to go through and do a lot more work to see which projects would be there. So we will get back what projects were included in that. But yeah, it was made very clear at that meeting, because there is the ability to do a joint application, that the timing was impossible to be able to do that. And I think our staff would agree that just getting their own information together is very, very challenging. So that's, we'll have to see. Certainly, I'm sure that staff were looking at across the county and trying to include every municipality they could, although they did mention that some municipalities would not particularly have a project because there may not be some that fit within that the criteria that was out there. Further questions? Councilor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. So if there is a 60% reduction in the overall DC, does that mean that is not just for the 3 programs that we've identified, but that would be across the board for any new development that anybody else would bring? Is that correct?
Yes, that is 100% correct. We have to reduce the development charges across the board. We can't pick and choose.
Okay, so arguably we would potentially, I'm just looking at this one table here, 60% reduction. So we would ultimately lose out on potentially the single detachment dwelling, DC charges, other multiples charges, everything that's listed in there, we would lose out on that DC revenue. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We'll have to reduce all residential development charges.
And that would be for a 3-year period?
For the 3-year period minimum, yes.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Deputy Mayor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. What was Councillor Hughes done?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
thinking of maybe another one, but go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you. I just had a question around some information I read about the annual reporting, and we did discuss this earlier, but I think it's important to speak to. So the annual reporting includes things we have no control over: year-over-year increase to building permits, actual new units that benefit from the decrease, and the number of units enabled. So is there a risk to committing to milestones we don't control, or do you feel comfortable that we can manage those annual reports and maintain whatever we kind of end up having to commit to in the application?
Yes, staff feels very comfortable. We have, it's not just the treasurer's estimate. We have consulted with our planning department, with building department, with the engineering department. So we looked at our active, like the planning application, the actual building permits already issued after March 30th that would be applicable, because we would have to go back and apply the reduction retroactively. So our estimates are very realistic, and they are in the low-medium range.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Another question. I also understand the development charges are frozen, but also the indexing. So in year 4, we're behind on the indexing. So what happens to help catch those charges up, assuming we, in year 4, charge those development fees again?
It's all in our hands. We can initiate development charges, new development charges background study that would address all these concerns and could be implemented after the reduction has been concluded.
Further questions? I have one for the treasurer that will build on Councillor Uses, is that, can you, I'll use the MURC example. I believe there's $8 million in funding. We don't have the $8 million attributed to DCs. We do not have $8 million in DCs sitting in a bank account. So if we go ahead and build that, we would have to debenture that and then service that debt.
Through DCs.
Through future DCs as they come in. But there's still interest on that, correct? What kind of, to service that, depending on our growth levels, we will require still funding to be able to come in. What happens if we don't even have enough revenue to cover that DC debt? Where does that come from?
We would borrow against other development charges, reserve funds. So we have separate reserve funds assigned per service. So Parks and Recreation have their own reserve funds. So we would borrow against roads, fire, DC studies. So yes, if even that's not sufficient, then we'll have to fund through our taxation, through other reserves, and then replenish them
So
later, once the development charges are collected.
So if we were successful in receiving the grant funding that we're after, even though it's, we're 8.1 total, it's a little bit less. It's not making us whole, certainly with the 20% input cost, but it's more guaranteed money than just it's paid over a period of time, but there is some stability there as opposed to waiting for that development to take place and fund through that
Yes,
mechanism.
absolutely. There's other benefits is that we don't have to borrow. We potentially can save some of our borrowing costs. Yeah.
Any further questions of the report? Okay. So there is a motion, there's an optional part. Well, I'll read it out here, and then if someone wants to move in, if not, we'll put it on the floor and see who, what does. So that the Council of Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report T-018-26 information, and that Council endorse participation in the Development Charge Reduction Program, DCRP, and direct staff to proceed with the preparation and submission of an application, including program required commitments to reduce development charges by 60%. And further, that this commitment and the corresponding reduction shall only come into force and be required upon the formal approval of the town's DCRP application. And further, that in compliance with DCRP guidelines, the proposed reduction shall only apply to applicable building permits per the DCRP guidelines, subject to the program approval. And further, upon formal approval of the town's DCRP application, staff be directed to bring forward the necessary bylaw to implement the development charge reduction for council's consideration and enactment. And just before I ask for mover to seconder, do we need anything in there for the 20%? Or is that captured?
The only commitment I would like to know is the actual DC reduction, not the capital reduction.
Okay.
Through the completion of the application, because like I mentioned before, we were working in parallel.
Microphone, please.
Sorry, I will repeat. The only commitment I would like to receive from council or direction is the actual DC reduction percentage, not the municipal contribution, because I would like to point that while we were working on the application, we identified that some of the ineligible costs could be counted, for the program could be counted towards municipal contribution. And we have done quite a lot for the MURC construction. We've done engineering, architecture, all of the EA studies. So far, we have contributed, and all the future costs, we will actually pay about 80% of the total project costs. So I believe that is more than 10%. So that would So it's not really
Necessary.
that, important for us to mention the 10%, because even for Clark Road urbanization, same thing, we've done a lot of preliminary work, and it has now, even today, it accounts about 60% of the total project cost. So I think we have exceeded that requirement by far.
Excellent. Okay, with that, is there someone who'd like to move and a seconder for that? Or if not, we will. Thank you, Councillor Halleru. Seconder. Councillor Van Kooten-Boston, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Hughes, please.
Are we fixed on that 60%, or should we consider 50%?
The motion that's on the floor is 60%.
60%? Okay,
Yep.
all
Councillor.
right, thank you.
Is there a question of why you would rather it be 50% or 60%, Councillor Hughes?
I'm just thinking in regards to the DCs that we will, I know they're low to medium in regards to the other DCs that we'll lose out on from the other development that may be going on in the next 3 years. And just to kind of like mitigate a little bit of that, to instead of 60% reduction, just go to a 50% reduction.
Mr. Graves, please.
Certainly, and I understand the comment and thought by the councillor. It's certainly something we discussed as staff quite a bit. We're still a little concerned that we won't be the top priority for this funding. So we thought moving towards a 60% reduction, showed our commitment and maybe upped our game in order to be competitive with some of the others. So that was why we were proposing it. We still think there's a net benefit that way, and we felt it was worthwhile.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Halleru, please, and then Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think the 60% is already established as something that will trigger interest. We have to consider ourselves some of the very few places where we still have opportunities for developers to come because of our housing crisis here. And so I think something that really spurs that and encourages developers to look our way rather than elsewhere is, I guess, something that maybe I agree with more than the 50%.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Similar to the conversation that happened at the county, I very reluctantly will support the 60% reduction, not because I think this reduction guarantees that home prices will go down, because there's absolutely no guarantee, even though that's the intent of the program. But I hope we get the funding, and I hope that our forecasts are accurate. And I hope this isn't too much work for staff to manage over the next several years. So assuming those things work out, this is great, but there is still a lot of risk. So I appreciate that staff have probably put everything aside this week to work on this and get this to a place where it can be submitted. I think I read it was a 29-page application across however many departments. Like, that is just, that cannot be easy. So we will put our faith in all that effort that went through, that this will benefit the town. But like I said, very reluctantly supporting that reduction on the premise that it may or may not reduce housing costs and make them more affordable for people here.
Further discussion? I'm supportive of the 60% because I think that we do have to give ourselves a leg up against the competition. I'm going to predict that a lot of this funding is going to go to large urban centers. Just $8.8 billion. All of the MHIP funding combined for infrastructure was $3 billion. So this is 8.8. It's a lot of money. But I also think that maybe they got a heads up in their discussions to the big city mayors talks, because I know the work that's done here and the work that done the county is that I don't know how they would possibly pull off an application without it. Also, our projects don't particularly fit the priorities, mostly because we don't do the work that is priority that's done at the county level. And certainly, they've certainly struggled with putting an application in on that as well, because it's such a diverse item there. But as far as that goes, I think in theory, if we have funding for it, then we don't need the DCs. And so that's where I'm comfortable putting the application in to see what the government gives back and putting the ball in their court, saying we're willing to go above and beyond many communities and work with you to reach the priorities, but you have to come to the table. And I know the development community, through discussions for the county, fully understands that, and they're going to try to go to work as well to try to make that happen. But I feel comfortable with putting in the application that's comfortable for Ingersoll. I thank staff for looking at all the projects, because there's a lot in the DC, but these are the ones they felt comfortable that are good return on value. And if the province comes to the table, then, we're actually going to be ahead. And with the current building environment, let's face it, Ingersoll development charges are not high by any means. We were not the target of this program to begin with. So I think that with that, we should also see a bunch of development, which we don't. So I agree with the deputy mayor that I don't think this is going to lower housing prices, but I do think it can reduce the burden on our ratepayers from what they would be responsible for to provide those services and move us up in our goals faster. And certainly, that's a positive. When you think about how much we're asking for in the percentage of that total funding, it's not a lot there, but hopefully we can be successful. But we'll at least get the application in, and this was the thought process at county as well, was put it in, see what they come back with, and if it's acceptable, we can sign it, and if it's not, then we keep our DCs right where they are, and we know we tried, and we can move forward. Again, I do feel bad for staff everywhere, but particularly our staff, and I'm just going to be blunt, a horribly rolled out program. The province and the feds announced this on March 30th. They then spent 60 days, I'm assuming, figuring out what they announced and how it was going to work. And they left 19 days, which works out to 14 working days. But really, the staff didn't get the application until last Wednesday. So it was 7 working days to really try to put something together. So I appreciate all the work there. And I think that's, it is what it is. And I think we'll see more stuff roll out, information as it goes forward. But I think that this gives us the best chance. It is by no means a slam dunk, or even, we're not in the priority group. We're a small community. We'll see what happens, and we'll try to tell our story. I know that, so we'll see. But I think I can certainly support this, and I think everything that staff has done to make this tight time frame work. Councillor Hallery, please.
Yeah, through you. I just want to add the sentiment that sometimes when we look at things like this, we feel like they don't necessarily impact the bottom line. What you have to see is the long-term impact. When there's more supply of the housing, the prices will come down. And so whether or not we see that right away, I just want us to have that comfort that if this does go through and 60% triggers more development, at some point the supply in housing brings down prices for everyone. So, or whether it's industrial. So I think it's a devil in the deep blue sea kind of choice, but I think we're on the right track.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that takes us down to item number 2 on special staff reports, the authorization of bylaws support financing applications. And I will turn that over to our treasurer, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks council approval of the bylaws required to support our application for our financing application to Infrastructure Ontario for the MURC and Clark Road Urbanization project. So I brought the report back in March. Back in March, for the March 9th council meeting, asking council to approve how the project is going to be financed. So that's when we established the amount to be borrowed at the time and passed through a bylaw. That bylaw is required by Infrastructure Ontario, but they also have their separate process, and this is just to comply with the process. They would like to see the council actually approve the application to the Infrastructure Ontario. So that the two bylaws are associated with approval of the application for the MURC and Clark Road Urbanization. For the servicing piece, the bylaw is, our lower tier bylaw is not required. It will be part of the county bylaw. I hope I explained it, but if you have any questions.
So just for clarification, this is to put in an application for
It's
financing,
the
and then we'll get the
application.
rates and what that is at the time of actual, when we know the exact amount and what we're actually applying. But this is applying up to that level.
That's up to that level. We don't have to borrow as much. We don't have to act on that. If we receive the funding for the MURC, and God knows what, maybe we will be successful and receive more funding through other means. So, but it's up to, so it's just the maximum amounts we can borrow through Infrastructure Ontario. Yes.
And just from a county perspective, because Ingersoll doesn't borrow in a long time, we don't see this here, but in other municipalities, the county does the borrowing, and so we'll see these from time to time, earlier in the year, and then county staff can go do their application, do that, and then at the time, that's why there's no numbers for interest rate, because they don't know yet. They shop the market and see exactly when that money's needed, then it comes back and it's approved at that time. So there's options there, and like, I agree, hopefully it will be less, but
Yes.
we have to pay the bills that we've signed up for, right?
Yes, and it's actually the first time I have to go through the borrowing process for the town of Ingersoll, so I've been learning as well. So it's kind of new to me, the upper lower tier dynamic and how it works. So hopefully the application will be approved, and at least we'll have that capacity if we need it.
Questions of the report? Seeing none, I just have one here. So I will put it out there, and we'll look for a mover and a seconder. That the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives staff report T-019-26 as information, and that Council authorizes the submission of financing applications to the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, OILC, for the multi-use recreation complex, MURC, and Clark Road urbanization projects, with this direction to be formalized through the enactment of bylaws 265471 and 265472 as attached to the special meeting agenda. And there's a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Hughes, move. Seconded by Councillor Van Kootenbossens. Discussion. Yeah, just part of the process and what we've approved already, and if we don't apply now, it's not like there's millions of dollars just waiting there. We have to get approved like everybody else. So. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then there's the correspondence and resolution, and that's the from AMO, and that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll received the correspondence from Association of Municipalities of Ontario titled Navigating the Development Charges Reduction Program as Information. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Bowman and Councillor Hughes. Discussion. To tell you the truth, I'm a little bit disappointed in AMO. They have a member of understanding with the province. I would expect that they were having discussions about this program, and I know that they have to wait for the government, but it's this is our association that's supposed to serve us, and there's some information, but staff have had to go way ahead of that before that information is coming out, and I know that there's been calls and stuff to learn. There's still a lot of unanswered questions, so I guess if there's request from myself is that, that communication could get better and that memorandum of understanding is listened to between the province and AMO. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And bylaws. That bylaws 265471 to 265473 be approved, subject to section 284.11-4 of the Municipal Act. Mover and a seconder for that. Councilor Halleru. Seconder. Deputy Mayor, please. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I've already signed the sheet saying I'm not going to veto. And the toughest one of the night, adjournment. That the council meeting of the corporation of the town of Ingersoll adjourn the June 6, 2026 special meeting of council at 6:34 p.m. Councilor Hughes. And a seconder. Councilor Bowman, please. Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.